Welcome back, everybody. In the last video, we set up our Firebase Analytics service. We can start to see how this is coming together now. We have our log manager, which will always load in our code base, and then we'll pick and choose which endpoints we want to send all of our logs to. So in our dev build right now, we're sending both the console, so the printing to the console, and Firebase. So we're going to send analytics to Firebase. In the prod version, we're only sending the analytics. We're not going to do any printing. In the mock version, we're only printing and not sending analytics. You can see how this is going to be super useful as we move forward. Before we move forward, though, I also want to add Mixpanel as an analytics provider in addition to Firebase. So we set up Firebase in the last video primarily because it is built into Firebase and it is free, and it just took us a couple of minutes to set up and use. But now we're using Mixpanel primarily because, in my mind, a far superior analytics tool. I would say Mixpanel is probably one of the best, if not the best, analytics tools on the market. I am not affiliated with them at all. It's just an honest opinion, having used it a fair amount. The major difference between Firebase Analytics and Mixpanel is that Mixpanel has user profiles and beautiful charts. Like, these charts are super easy to read and analyze our data. And later in this course, after we add all of our analytics, we're going to actually add a bunch of charts and analyze some of the data. And we're going to use Mixpanel for that because it is just so easy to use, as you guys will see when we get there. Mixpanel is a paid service though, and it is significantly more expensive than Firebase Analytics. Personally, I would recommend using Mixpanel in basically every project anyway. Generally, analytics are cheap if your app is actually profitable. There is a couple different prices here. $25 a month is well worth it, especially for like startups. They also do have a free tier, which is what we're going to use in this event. So up to 20 million events for free, which is way more than we need for our sample project. So let's jump into Mixpanel, and we need to first create an account. So let's get started for free. Go ahead and sign in. Once you're inside, go ahead and create a new project. I have several projects in Mixpanel, so I'm sure I'm getting different screens than you. Just follow the steps to create a new project, call it AI chat or whatever. On the top right is the settings button here. You can go into project settings, and then in the project settings is going to be a project token. So go ahead and find your token and then copy it. Let's jump into our Xcode project. And in our utilities folder, we already have a file called keys. In there, go ahead and make another value called Mixpanel token and just paste in that token. I'm going to go ahead and do it now off screen. All right. And now let's get set up. Let's go to our services folder, create a new empty file, call it Mixpanel service. In here, we need to import the Mixpanel SDK, which I will also link below. It is on GitHub. So let's go ahead and copy the URL. Let's come up to our file, add package dependencies, paste in the Mixpanel URL. I'll switch to the next major version. And in the repo, it looks like the next major version is 4 to less than 5. So let's change this to 4 to less than 5. And we should get Mixpanel Analytics probably 4.3.0. Let's add it into our target and then add package. Mixpanel 430, perfect. Let's go ahead and import Mixpanel. Let's create a struct called the Mixpanel service. And you already know that we're going to conform to log service. I am going to yet again move fast here because the Mixpanel syntax is not important to this course. So let's go ahead and conform to the protocol. All right, up here, let's create an initializer for the Mixpanel service. And let's pass in our token of type string. Let's initialize Mixpanel by calling Mixpanel.initialize. And we will pass in our token and our token of type token, and we'll set track automatic events equal to true. There's a bunch of events that come automatically in Mixpanel, like app start, app session, every time the user opens the app. And it's really helpful to set that to track these automatically. We can also access the Mixpanel.instance, main instance.logging enabled, and set that to true or false. So let's pass in a Boolean to call logging enabled of type bool. We'll set it equal to false by default and pass that in here. This instance, we're going to basically access in all of these methods here. So let's go ahead and make a shorthand for it. So we'll say a private var instance of type Mixpanel instance, and we'll set it equal to a Mixpanel instance dot Mixpanel and Mixpanel dot main instance. So here I can call instance dot logging enabled. All right. Inside the instance, there is a identify, which we can identify the user with a user ID. We can also say if let name. Let's go ahead and instance dot people dot set. We're going to set a property. Now in Mixpanel, we can set any key as the property, but for name and email, they have a special key. So we'll use the $ here with name, set that equal to name. We'll also say if let email, and same thing, I will copy and paste this, except this is going to be email, and we'll set that equal to email. For add user properties, fairly similar to what we did for Firebase Analytics, except they're a little less stringent with some of the additional rules. All right, add user properties. Mixpanel allows up to like 2,000 user properties, so we're going to ignore the is high priority. In here, we're going to call instance.people.set, and there's a dictionary of properties. We can see here that this is of type properties, but if I jump into it, it is actually a type alias for a dictionary that has keys of strings and values of Mixpanel type. So up here, let's create a variable called user properties of type string : Mixpanel type, set it equal to a blank dictionary. And now let's loop on our dictionary and convert it to this dictionary. So just to point out one difference here, the Firebase Analytics accepted a dictionary of string any, and then it gave us a bunch of warnings in the console that it didn't take certain types. Mixpanel is basically avoiding that problem by just giving us this specific type. So it's saying that as long as you can conform to Mixpanel type, then we're going to accept it rather than accepting any and then throwing errors. I actually think this is probably a little bit better because now in the code, we'll know exactly which ones are going to convert or not. In here, let's go ahead and loop on the key value in the dictionary. Open the brackets. Firstly, let's clip the keys. So we'll say let the key equals the key.clipped. Firebase clipped it to 40 characters, but Mixpanel has 255, which is probably not going to clip any of our actual keys. And then we got to try to cast the value as a Mixpanel type. So we'll say if let value equals value as Mixpanel type. Then let's go ahead and set user properties, and we'll set it equal to, at the key, we'll set it equal to the value. Now we can pass in our user properties. For delete profile, we can call instance.people.delete user. And then for track event, we're going to actually do the same thing that we did here. So let's copy this dictionary conversion and paste it down here. And then, except here, we're going to call instance.track, and we'll track event with properties. The event, we're going to call the event.event name. I don't think that we need to clip the name. We'll change that if we need to. The dictionary here would be the event parameters. So we'll say if let parameters equals event.event parameters. Then let's go ahead and loop on the parameters. This is event properties, event properties, event properties. Let's say if event properties is empty, let's return nil, otherwise event properties. And then Mixpanel does not have a special way that I know of to track screen events. So inside our track screen event, we're just going to call track event and pass in the event so that screen events log as regular events. Just like that, we should now be set up to actually use Mixpanel. That was pretty seamless, pretty easy. Let's go ahead and Command-Shift-K to clean, and let's jump into our dependencies. And now we should also be able to add a Mixpanel service with the token, which I will add in my keys.mixpanel token that we set up at the beginning of the video, and logging enable is set to true for now. And then we'll also add a Mixpanel service into our prod build in which logging enable is false, which I think is our default false. So I can just delete this here. Let's Command R to build and run and see if we get anything to print out to the console relating to Mixpanel. All right, let's open up the console quick. And it looks like I'm getting a whole bunch of stuff that's logging in here. Let's type in Mixpanel and we can see, all right, logging enabled, successfully inserted a row, successfully inserted rows. I assume this is just like adding user properties or adding events, but clearly Mixpanel is working. We didn't get any error messages, so I think we are set up and good to go. I'm going to now set logging enabled back to false, Command R. I think that'll clean up a lot of this extra stuff that's in the console. So let's go here, Mixpanel. Yeah, that just cleaned up all of our Mixpanel code. Sweet. We are looking good and we are ready to rock and roll. So that was actually pretty easy to set up a new dependency, a totally new analytics service in probably 20 minutes. And you can imagine how easy this is now if you had multiple projects. And if you want to go and start testing out a bunch of different analytics services, all we need to do again is like this quick file and we're set up and good to go. And we don't need to change anything else in our app. So this is awesome. Let's go ahead and commit this, Option Command C to make this a feature, and we'll say add Mixpanel. Let's stage it, let's commit it, push it on up to GitHub, and I think we have one more service that we're going to work on in the next video.